Today we're going to be doing an in-depth tour of my sewing studio. You'll notice that this space is pretty well organized, and I do try to keep it like this all the time. Of course, while you're actively sewing, there are things out and about out of their homes, but it is really important for all of my items to have specific homes to go back to, so that anytime I take something out, I can put it back where it belongs, and then everything is nice and tidy and organized. Something to note about me is that if my space isn't organized, I pretty much feel like I can't function. I don't know why I'm this way, but my surroundings really affect my ability to be productive, and I'm generally a productive person, so when I can't be, it's really hard for me. Anyways, with all that being said, my sewing studio is really tidy. It generally stays tidy, and hopefully I can give you some tricks on how to keep your space tidy as well. Everything that I mentioned in this video, I'll do my best to link down below so that you have a quick reference if you want to look into the item or purchase the item. But with that being said, I've run my sewing business out of here for the past year, so there are items in here that were business investments. If I were just a home sewer, I would probably eventually invest in these items, but I accumulated them much faster so that my business could be more efficient. Because as we know, time is money, and obviously you have to make money with your business. If you're not at a point in your sewing journey where you feel like you're ready to invest into items, that's totally okay. Hopefully this can show you how to be more organized in your space and have your items be more functional for you. I've had multiple renditions of this space and it's gotten better and better over time. I'll insert some pictures as we go along of what it used to look like, and I can talk about why this current system is better than it previously was. So without further ado, let's get into it. When you first walk in, this is the door. As you can see, the door is at an angle and doesn't sit flush with this wall or with this wall. That can be super annoying because it cuts off the space to the left or to the right, and it makes this corner here feel pretty not functional. What I've done to combat this is use this little stopper here. I purchased it from Home Depot and I can link one below, but essentially what it does is it stops the door from going any farther than you want it to. That's super nice because I can have my dress form here without the door hitting it if someone were to come in. Now let's talk about this beautiful baby. So this pretty lady is actually the first of multiple naked ladies in the studio. I'll give you a little tour of my naked ladies. Naked lady number 1, naked lady number 2, naked lady number 3, naked lady number 4. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that little tour. We're back to talking about my dress form now. This is a dress form from One Dress Forms, which I purchased on Etsy. It's a size 6 and it's the closest to my measurements that I could find. When I was searching for a dress form, I did a lot of research. If you're in the market for a dress form, you'll probably have noticed that most dress forms aren't actually proportionate to your size. That concept doesn't make any sense to me because if you're making clothes, you're probably making clothes for a human body, and your dress form should replicate a human body. But as you probably know, there are very unrealistic standards for women's beauty, so I found this company which actually makes dress forms that are similar to the size of a real human body. Okay. Moving on. The next really big item in my space is this custom cutting mat. I purchased the mat from Rhino Mats, which will do custom dimensions for you, and that was perfect for this space. Since the door is in such a weird position in this room and the room isn't a full square, having this custom made was really important. Before making this room a sewing space, it was actually a guest room, and I had a small desk in here that I had for sewing, which means I was cutting everything on the floor at that point in time with just a normal rotary cutter. At some point, I eventually upgraded to having a bigger table that I could cut on the table, but when I was using my rotary cutter, I would accidentally cut into the table pretty often, and that was just super annoying because a rotary mat is only so big. But often when you're cutting garment pieces, the pieces are significantly larger than a rotary cutting mat, so it got really, really annoying. With that being said, a custom cutting mat is expensive. I found that it was a worthwhile investment for my business, and I'm super glad that I did it. But if you're looking to do something similar on a budget, you can just put together multiple rotary cutting mats, and that'll kind of do the job. So essentially, this is just a wood base that we created, and we put the rotary mat on top. Underneath is 2 cabinets on wheels that I purchased off Facebook Marketplace. The on wheels part is super important because then I can move it around the room if I need to. For example, if I want to use this wall to take pictures on, or if I have a guest coming over and we want to put a blow-up mattress in here, if I maneuver this table, there's enough space on the ground to have a guest. If you have wood floors and a big table, I do recommend having the table on wheels. It's just super convenient and it makes your space be able to transform if you need it to. Between the 2 cabinets, I laid in pieces of wood that I basically just stapled fabric onto, and those act as shelves, which is super nice because then I can have my printer on there, I have some books on there, and I also have some bigger blankets that I've either made into coats or I plan to make into coats. In the drawers and cabinets, I have different supplies for my business. So for example, I often do pop-up shops to display my clothing, and it's normally a 10 by 10 space with a table, 2 clothing racks, full 10 by 10 tent, and random accessories that I put on the table for display. All of the small items I keep in a box so that it's easy to carry, and all of that stuff is in one of my cabinets. The top 2 drawers don't actually function because the tabletop doesn't doesn't allow access to them, but that's fine. I don't actually need the extra space. Okay, let's talk about some of my favorite sewing books that I keep next to my printer. These first two books were inspired by Maya, whose Instagram page I'll pop on the screen for you. She has the most amazing sense of personal style, so I definitely recommend that you check out her page. This first book is the Factory Sewing book. These books were on my wish list for a long time. And this year for Christmas, my family created an Excel spreadsheet where we were able to type in all the things that we would actually want for Christmas. So this was a perfect way to make sure that anything that was purchased for you is something that you'll actually cherish. I believe this was the first year or maybe the second year that we've done this, but it worked perfectly and I think we'll continue to do it in the future. My sisters and I are all at a point in our life where we'd rather have a few gifts that we really love, a ton of gifts to open on Christmas Day that we don't actually want or need. So anyways, I put these two books on my wish list and my baby sister bought them for me for Christmas. This next book is actually a textbook that I put on my wish list. It feels very adult of me to have asked for a textbook for Christmas, but that's truly what I wanted. And if I hadn't received it as a gift, I would have invested in it for myself and my business. It is the very famous Pattern Making for Fashion Design by Helen Joseph Armstrong. This book has pretty much all things pattern making in it. It's a really helpful reference point if, for example, I wanted to make like a big poofy sleeve and I didn't know how, a different style of collar and I was trying to think of how it would work. Pretty much all the things you might want are going to be in this book. With that being said, I am still on the hunt for a pattern grading book, so if any of you have recommendations, please leave them below. This next book is also a textbook. I purchased this one off Facebook Marketplace and was super lucky to find someone locally who is a fashion designer that was planning to move out of her house and move into her van. So she was essentially getting rid of everything she had. That included dress forms, sewing machines, notions, anything you could think of. At that point in time, I already had most of the things that I wanted or needed. So I ended up just picking up this textbook, some fabric, and laundry notions, which I'll show you later. Okay, on to my ironing station. My ironing board fits perfectly in between this table and this table, but as you can tell, it's super dirty and old. I think I picked this ironing board up from Target, but I definitely didn't take care of it and I didn't have a real cover for it, so it's kind of on its last leg at this point. This iron that I have is actually from Singer, but I bought it secondhand from Goodwill. It does the job all right, but I definitely don't love it and I hope to get something that's cordless soon. The next two items are this sleeve ironing board and this pressing hand. Both of these items are vintage and I got them from an estate sale. I stapled this fabric down myself because the old cover was just old and deteriorating. Truthfully, neither of these get used a ton. Okay. On to probably the most exciting part, the actual sewing space. The table behind me is made up of 2 kitchen cabinets and a 10-foot long butcher block from Home Depot. I previously had 2 long tabletops from IKEA, but they were the exact opposite of sturdy. So anytime I was using my serging machine at full power, the table would shake and it was super, super annoying. The middle of it would flex and it almost felt like it was gonna break. So it was time to upgrade the table, and the table wasn't quite functional for the space, so that's when I upgraded to this butcher block. As you can see, it's still in its wrapping. I've had it for a while now, but I purchased it back in the winter, and because it was so cold in the winter, I couldn't stain it. Otherwise, the stain wouldn't set. I still do plan on staining it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet because normally I'd rather be sewing than staining furniture. As I probably mentioned earlier, having a functional space is top priority, and right underneath that is having a tidy and clean space. Throughout my renditions of this sewing space, I've made it, I think, as functional as I can. One upgrade that's been really important for me is the chair that I'm sitting in now. It's on wheels, so I can wheel myself between all of my sewing machines. A wheelie chair is a very small investment that you can make to upgrade your sewing space. However, it doesn't really work if you have carpet. In addition to that, having all of my sewing machines right next to each other makes it easy for me to wheel between all of them, so try to think about that when you're laying out your space. I've put everything in a place where I can easily grab it in my chair when I need it. For example, when I'm at my sewing machine, up here I have access to needles, bobbins, buttons, all the things that I need. Then when I'm over at my serging machine, I have access to all of my serger threads. In between the 2 machines, I have this hanging thread rack, and that's awesome for grabbing thread when I need it over here. And something else that's a small investment but also a huge game changer for making your space clean is this handy dandy little cordless vacuum. Okay, let's talk about sewing machines next. The machine over here is the Elna Expressive 830. It's an embroidery machine that I purchased secondhand off Facebook Marketplace. This machine is well over $1,000 brand new, but I purchased it for $800. And if I were just a home sewer, I wouldn't have invested in this machine, but since I use it for my business, it ended up being totally worth it. I make a lot of embroidered tote bags and they sell pretty well, so this machine has paid for itself. Right behind me, I have my everyday sewing machine. It's the Brother BQ 1350 Quilt Club series. I absolutely love this machine. It was a huge upgrade from my previous previous home sewing machine, and it has a ton of really cool features. The most important feature for me is the auto tension. Essentially, I could put 4 layers of denim through it, and then right after that, I could put a layer of silk, and both of them would come out with beautiful stitching without changing any settings on the machine. This is obviously a fantastic feature, but it does come at a pretty high price point. Again, this was an investment that was worth it for my business. However, if I was only home sewing, I would have probably eventually upgraded to this machine. It just would have taken a lot longer to get there. It also has some other really great features, like a ton of decorative stitching, the ability to embroider letters, and a whole lot of other random things that I probably haven't even scratched the surface of. The last sewing machine that I have out on this table is the Baby Lock Accolade. This is a 2-in-1 cover stitch and serging machine, and it is by far and away the best investment I've made for my business. Same thing goes for this machine. If I was just a home sewer, I would absolutely invest in this. It comes in at a pretty lofty price point, but it's paid for itself like tenfold at this time. My previous serging machine was purchased secondhand, and it was the biggest pain in the butt to thread. At the beginning, it was taking me like hours to thread it. It wouldn't even come out properly, and I absolutely hated it. It ended up going into the closet to collect dust, and what's the point in having a machine that you don't use? But the Accolade has jet air threading, which essentially means you just press a button and it threads itself, and I can thread this machine so fast. For all you avid sewers out there who are interested in a cover stitch machine or a serger machine or having both, I would absolutely recommend getting this 2-in-1. I know a lot of people say that it can be annoying to switch between the two, but it's super easy. It probably takes me like, I don't know, 3 minutes to switch from cover stitching to serging and vice versa. As you can tell, I absolutely love this machine and I would highly recommend it. Both my Accolade and Quilt Club series were purchased brand new from my local sewing store. I'll link them below because they're awesome and they're a great resource if you have any questions about machines. Another small feature that I have is a little glass vase that lives underneath the Accolade machine. When I'm serging and cutting off little pieces of fabric, all of those pieces of fabric go into the vase, and that's where they live until I'm ready to rehome them. Once the vase is full, I'll take all of the scraps and I put them inside of this poof that I made, and it's basically just used as stuffing. But if scraps are big enough, I'll save them and I'll try to use them for other projects. Okay, let's talk about pattern storage next. All of the patterns that I purchased live in here. This is essentially like an accordion, and it holds a lot of different folders. So when you open it up, you can see all of these folders. I just broke it. Sick. Each pattern goes into a manila folder like this. If it's a pattern that I've personally created for my business, I also have a little price tag down here. The price tag is super in depth. You can see how much the fabric costs, how much the notions cost, how many hours it takes me to make, how much the labor costs, the total price point, and the markup that I have on it. The 50% markup helps cover things that are hard to verbalize tangibly. For example, the time that it takes me to source the fabric, or the price point of servicing machines, or shipping costs, all those types of things. As a general rule of thumb, after I've printed out a home sewing pattern, I don't cut up the paper at all. I just fold it up and I stick it inside the folder as is, and then when I want to use the pattern, I trace off the size that I need. I do this because our sizes fluctuate and I want to make sure that my garments fit properly at the time of making them. For example, before COVID, I was working out a ton, and since COVID, my lifestyle has changed a lot, my body's changed a lot, and I need to account for that when I'm making sewing patterns. So if I had initially cut up a pattern pre-COVID for my size, it probably isn't going to fit me anymore. So it's better to keep the original pattern intact and use tracing paper to trace off my current size. Okay, let's talk about my closet next. About half of the closet is used for sewing things. The other half I'm not going to really open up because it's mostly just extra storage for the rest of our household items. But on the sewing storage side, I have all of my fabric hung up. Something that I found really important is making sure that my fabric has a purpose. It's super easy to just purchase fabric because you think it's pretty but not really have anything in mind. Or if you did have a project in mind when purchasing it, by the time it's sat in your closet for a while, you're not really thinking about that anymore, and your fabric can very easily go to waste. So the way that I stay organized is every time I purchase fabric, I write down what it's intended for and if I've washed it or not. It gets nicely folded and put on a hanger, and this is where it lives. In my closet, I also have a vintage sewing machine. I purchased it when I was super young with like all of my life savings at the time, which I think was $50. I didn't even use this sewing machine and I didn't know how to sew back then, so it was kind of weird that I was drawn to it, but it is truly a beautiful piece of furniture. The Singer actually totally functions, however, I I don't use it on a daily basis because there's absolutely no space in my current studio for it, but I'm holding on to it because hopefully one day there will be space for it, and there's a lot of sentimental value for me, so I'm not planning to give it up. The machine also has some fun compartments. Like if you open up the stool, there's a storage space, and in that storage space I keep things like vintage binding, grommets, tools, and other random miscellaneous items. I also have these really cute little signs that I embroidered that I use to promote my business when I'm at pop-ups. The last thing that lives in this closet is this grocery bag. Inside of it, there's lingerie notions that I purchased from someone off Facebook Marketplace. I haven't really delved into this bag because I haven't started making lingerie, but I do plan on making lingerie in the future, so it's kind of unorganized, but it's at least separate from all the other things. There's a ton of lace, boning, and other random accessories that hopefully one day I'll get around to using. So that's pretty much it for my sewing studio. Please keep in mind that everyone's space is different, everyone has different needs, and everyone's in a different stage of their sewing journey. For me, I started sewing in this room in a tiny little corner on a small desk. I'm now at a point in my sewing journey and my sewing career that it's blossomed into an entire room, and I'm super grateful for that opportunity. I recognize that not everyone has this kind of space available to them, but that's totally okay. You can start with whatever you have. Try to use your unique situation and space to best suit your needs. The first rendition of this space when it became my full studio isn't anywhere near as nice as it is now. It took a lot of trial and error and figuring out the space that I have and how to best work with it. I hope that you picked up little bits and pieces from this video to help enhance your sewing space. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.